So, did the war economy just kill your chances of funding, of developing your idea, your innovation? Today, EU funding is moving fast, really fast towards defense. Can the answer be dual use? In this episode, I sit down with an innovation expert, Christopher Fox, to discuss a powerful idea. Innovation is a communication problem, and generally people address it the wrong way. And then we also explore an open Erasmus Plus call that could really reshape how you build your partnerships and skills, ecosystems, everything. So if you're interested in exploring the possibilities of turning dual use, of using your existing work repositioning as dual use so that it is eligible for defense calls, you should check out my newsletter, Polisdoxa, next Friday, April 25th. I'll be offering a free tool, Canvas, to help you do that. So just go to Substack, look for Polisdoxa, or look for my name, or just go to the podcast notes and click the link, probably simpler. So this tool will be in this next issue of the newsletter, April 25th. Why? Well, in Portuguese, I would say 25 de Abril sempre. Why? We are celebrating the revolution and democracy, freedom, rule of law, those kind of things we take for granted, but should be always celebrated. Don't miss this interview with Christopher Fox. This is a really powerful discussion, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. See you next week. So, for decades, European innovation lived under this belief that peace was permanent. It was an assumption. So defense became a taboo topic. I don't know. So EU funding steered clear of military applications. It was like if defense industries were a closed sector detached from Europe. And the general view behind this was that it was morally wrong to build weapons. Well, this was a luxury. After the Cold War, Europe could do that, embracing the so-called peace dividend and cutting defense budgets. Because, remember, history ended, right? Remember that? Well, peace was there's another reason. Peace was really at the center of the EU. It was created to ensure peace. And it succeeded, mostly. No wars inside the EU, but there were wars in Europe. Okay. Anyway, these two reasons contributed to the aversion to the military-industrial collaborations. A luxury. But then Russia happened, right? Russia's major invasion of Ukraine forced Europe to reconsider all of this, its defense posture. So maybe defense was not a thing of the past after all. So the EU reacted, and like always, it reacted big. Call it the Rearm Europe initiative, also known as Readiness 2030. And this plan aims to mobilize up to 800 billion euros for defense capabilities. It also aims to relax fiscal rules, allowing member states to increase the defense spending without breaching that EU's neoliberal deficit limits. And it encourages joint procurement and investment in critical technologies, drones, AI, cybersecurity, but the key word is joint procurement, like the pandemic, a new bazooka, let's call it this way. And this marks an historic pivot because the EU is not just increasing defense spending, it's also integrating defense considerations into its broader innovation in industrial policies, even in its research programs like Horizon Europe. So the EU is no longer relying on the assumption that it brought peace to Europe. It now aims at assuring peace by building deterrence. I think the speech is good. Let's see the actions. What does this mean to you, to all of us? For researchers and innovators, this shift is both a challenge and an opportunity. You may be crowded out, so that's a challenge, and you may miss huge research programs. FOMO of missing opportunities, right? The key lies in two magic words: dual use. Dual use technologies are those that are applicable in both civilian and military contexts. By repositioning research within a dual use context, projects can align with the EU's defense priorities. They can access broader ranges of funding opportunities. They can contribute to Europe's strategic autonomy and security. This doesn't mean militarizing everything, all research. It means recognizing and articulating the potential defense applications. Okay, let's be clear. Very few things are civilian use only. I won't say everything, but most things can be dual use. We already have some great case studies. Consider Elsing, this German company, a Munich-based startup. It was created in 2021. It was created to develop AI applications, and now it's basically building AI-enabled drones for Ukraine. And they have secured significant funding in this time, about 450 million. So this exemplifies a pivot, and that's an interesting issue. In many cases, repositioning is enough. Others choose to pivot and change their entire activities. We have other examples. Einride, I don't know how to pronounce this Swedish name of this company that was focused on autonomous electric freight transport. And now they are basically exploring the military application of these driverless technologies to bring military equipment and I guess ammunition to front lines. So I'll leave a list of examples with links in the show notes, so that you can see how this is already happening, and you better hurry. What's your next step? To navigate this new landscape, you first need to assess your research for dual use potential. How can you reposition yourself as dual use? Then you should engage with defense stakeholders, like Elsing did, and you should take a good look on the calls on the defense sector. Read those calls carefully, and also try to leverage the EU support mechanism. So in summary, what are the next steps? Two main things. Read those defense calls carefully, or you can use the services of European Red. They were here a couple of episodes ago. I'll leave a link in the show notes as well. They provide great service in this area. That's the first thing. Be aware of all the opportunities in this area and reposition yourself to dual use. This week's newsletter, my newsletter Policy Talks, I will offer a canvas to help you do that, to help you reposition your services, your research, what you do for dual use purposes. You can also consider pivoting your entire activity a little bit like Elsing did. These are the next steps. So, what can we conclude from here? First of all, welcome to the war economy. Okay, this is how it looks like to live in a war economy. Researchers are forwarded to the building of weapons and dual use technologies and stuff. So these are the magic words, dual use if you want to reposition. You can also consider pivoting. Uh, Major conclusion, defense is now the priority for peace. Peace is now the objective, not the assumption. That's the new reality of the European Union. See you next week. Welcome back to InnovEU. We are back with another interview. Today we have Christopher Fox from Southern California. So yes, we have our first American guest, finally.
Happy to be here for
Welcome,
that.
Christopher. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. You have this logo behind you talking about ideas-led growth. That's provoking thought. Can you tell us a little bit about your activity and how that relates to research?
Sure, sure. So I'll start by describing the activity, and then I think I'll help connect the dots between that kind of work and what is done by research teams or
Great.
groups. So when we talk about ideas-led growth, we work with companies. Some of them are very large and very established companies. Some are founder-led startups that have just begun their process, or some are research teams. But the principle behind ideas-led growth is that every innovation is an idea about change. You're really bringing to reality an idea about how to change something in the world. It can be something very specific related to a particular industry or a particular research domain, but you are nevertheless creating something new. And the challenge that I find with many research teams and many founding teams in the world of startups is they become very focused on solving their research problems or building what it is that they're building. And they will often lose sight that above that is a big idea about change, and that idea must be communicated to many different types of stakeholders, potential investors, potential customers, if it's a commercial research initiative, other people within a field, if it's a less commercial research initiative, various funders, which can be venture capital in the private world, or it can be public funders. There's a lot of public funding, especially within the EU for research and programs. Any of those stakeholders, it almost sounds obvious, but I think people forget when they're so busy doing their work, they need to understand the innovation or the overarching idea. And in order for them to do that, any research team, public or private, needs a very clear communication strategy to understand their messaging and the way that they will bring those messages to the various audiences and stakeholders and communities that have some degree of relevance to the research initiative.
Okay, so you help people communicate their idea, their main idea. No, for what you said, you help them keep that idea in mind, don't forget about it,
Yes.
and communicate it to different audiences. And that audience can be an evaluator for an EU-funded program, for instance, or can be a venture capital that might be interested in your idea. I think that's quite interesting, and I think that will be interesting for a large part of the audience of this podcast because they struggle with funding. They struggle with developing their projects. Do you work with European companies or only
I
American?
do. I do. So I have a mix of companies globally. I have many clients that are based here in the US, which is very much a private funding driven market. I also have worked with many companies both in the UK and within Europe in order for them to navigate a different funding climate where it's often a mix, much more of a mix of public and private funding sources. And I think as your audience knows better than I, there are a lot of priorities and objectives within Europe right now to achieve technical and scientific competitiveness, especially in these very turbulent times of really wanting to have that regional strength and that regional solidity around areas like financial innovation and blockchain and all of those different tools, or artificial intelligence or other data related tools, augmented reality, virtual reality. There's so many different ways in which I think it's become very clear in Europe, especially. I think the landmark last year was the Draghi report when it came out, and it really set the stage between where Europe stands now and where it would like to go, but to deliver on those objectives in a European manner, following European values and ideals. And those are often very different. There's much more of a focus on sustainability. There's much more of a focus on things like data privacy. Unfortunately, in the US, we sort of forget a lot about those things. But the point of that being, various of European Union governance have it is that they are looking to achieve. Very important for research teams who are seeking to figure out how to connect what they to what funders are looking for. And so, for example, I've worked with some startups that have sought funding under some of these European Commission programs. And it has always been that very clear process of figuring out how to communicate what they do, not in a way that makes sense to what they're developing at their desks, but in a way that makes sense to reviewers and evaluators.
I was going to ask you that from that experience you have in both sides of the Atlantic, how do you compare the criteria used by an American private investor or an European Erasmus Plus evaluator? Is there a clear difference that you can identify?
I think there are a few clear differences. One is that, because in the United States, the funding climate is so driven by venture capital, it's really the kind of thinking that venture capital firms are looking for. They will emphasize what is the commercial viability of a particular initiative. They will emphasize they want to understand, does the founding team have the business expertise to take this product to market and ultimately take their company to an exit. And that's really the way that VC funds look at. They look at the commercial viability. They look at their assessment of the team's capabilities. And they often, a lot of times it really is, it sounds very scientific. A lot of times it's based on personal relationships and almost like the vibration that they get. So it's much sense of, you just have to make that great impression. In Europe, we're all humans, so we certainly all look for a personal sense of credibility. But my sense is that European evaluators in funding are not completely ignoring, but they're less focused on making sure that there's an immediate commercial benefit to research initiatives and that there's an immediate and visible path for a company to achieve an exit. They're much more, there's that additional factor of looking at things like regional technical competitiveness, looking at sustainability, looking at data privacy, looking at some of these other things that are more tied to policy values. In the US, because it's private venture capital firms, there's very little sense of policy. Yes, there are some VC firms that have mission-related criteria, but in general, it's purely a commercial play. In Europe, it's an interesting mix because there's a commercial play and there's a development goals kind of play.
I can see advantages in both sides, and disadvantages as well. Of course, nothing is perfect so far. But
I
I can see
agree.
that your strategy, your action is really important for both because they both need to communicate their ideas and maybe with different strategies adjusted to the criteria, but they both need to communicate their innovative ideas and make sure that people understand why they must go on.
I think
So
that's right. I think that's right.
I can see that you have a good market. You have a good positioning. For how long have you been doing this? So just
I've been doing this since 2007, and I've had various focuses in my company since 2018. We've focused exclusively in this world of institutional finance and capital markets. Prior to that, we worked with companies in some other industries as well, and teams in other industries, including healthcare and education. And we're sort of in this moment now where any industry you could put the suffix tech after it. So there's fintech, climate tech, ed tech for education, health tech for health. It's like anything tech. But what I chose to do is focus on this world of capital markets, partly for personal interest. It's hard to think about. It's very complex, and that keeps my personal interest going to have to figure out these very obscure things around derivatives or hedge funds or
Mhm.
tokenization and cryptocurrency. It's honestly just kind of fun to do that. But yeah, we've been really focusing on communication strategies for a long time, and it was during that process that I started to realize the thing that it always had in common is that the teams that thrive are the ones that really use their ideas to lead their growth and to achieve their objectives versus those that are looking for more kind of transactional outcomes.
Hmm. One other difference I believe exists is that here in Europe, the European programs introduced an international cooperation side to project. Every project must have multiple countries participating, and this kind of makes the activity itself more international. Now, my question is, and I've heard this from other people, I want to hear your opinion about it. Would Europeans gain from spending some time in the US, doing some kind of Erasmus mobility to the US and learn some cultural differences? And the other way around, would Americans gain from doing that as well?
Yeah, so I think that what Europeans can learn from the American culture is, you know, here we're very good at creating a slick package around something. There's a lot of strength in creative branding and really having strong, almost like Hollywood level messaging and the kind of the entertainment value of a brand. A lot of strength in things like digital marketing and social networking and all of those ways of getting messages across and delivering an experience. I think that's where American culture excels, is really good at that kind of experiential thing. And that would be valuable, I think, for any European firms looking to work on the global stage to have that kind of stage presence. I think what
Hmm.
Americans could learn a little bit is that, as I said, I think sometimes the financial results or the commercial outcomes become too much of the focus, and people will lose sight of the real idea underneath something. They'll lose sight of the fact that, yes, there are your kind of individual or selfish needs, but you're still working in a market, which is a community of stakeholders. And that can change from country to country. You know, it's one of the things that I really like about that European model that you mentioned is that, you know, overall, Europe is made, you know, they're continuing to go down this path of weaving together the various countries and cultures across Europe. I mean, it started in the late 1980s and early 1990s with, you know, just the very initial senses of a union, and all the way, you know, very fast and long jump to things like we're seeing today, where, you know, Europe is trying to achieve a very tight capital markets union where funding and initiatives are located in multiple places throughout the continent in order to get those things to come together.
Mhm. I want to ask you, from your experience, what sectors have you worked on, and is there one project that really became your favorite, that really was stuck in your memory, or are they all the same?
You know, it's hard to say. They're all different for various reasons. I usually uh, do some work at the beginning of the process, even to choose which companies I will work with, and that's a luxury position that I can be in because our business is successful. So it can work both ways, where clients choose us and we also choose clients to make sure that they're doing something really innovative. It's hard to say that I have any real favorites. One that I've worked with, it's a bank that has been in business for literally for centuries. They've been
Hmm.
in place for a very long time, and they're really trying to redefine who they are and what they do for the 21st century. And so that's always very exciting because you have all of this heritage to be brought
Hmm.
into the contemporary world. I love working with startups because those founders, that's really their passion. They're, you know, it's people who are willing to lose sleep and put their economic livelihood on at stake to bring something together. And so it's, I know I've kind of answered your question in every way possible. Um, but you know, each one brings its own unique set of things that are personally satisfying.
Okay, so if you don't mind, we'll publish your contact details in the podcast notes so that people can get in touch with you. But I would like to ask you one more question, which is, what kind of projects would you like to do in the future?
So I would definitely like to work with um, projects that are at the intersection of kind of the two ways of technology that have influenced financial innovation are around blockchain and artificial intelligence. And any projects that are bringing the two of those together, I think
Mm.
that that aspect, people started to forget about blockchain in a way because cryptocurrency has had some turbulence and challenges of its own. Artificial intelligence has taken all the oxygen out of the room as far as what people are interested in. But I think the two will come together, and anyone that's working on those two things together, I would especially love to speak with them because I think it's a strong innovation opportunity, and that means it's a strong storytelling and messaging opportunity.
I see your point. Yeah, those are two powerful innovation avenues. If you put them together, yeah, I see what you're going. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Uh,
becomes.
any final message? Would you like to close with any final message?
No, I think that's it. I'd come back to this idea that the, you know, when people get very focused on a project, always taking that step back in various ways to remember what is the big idea and to almost to rededicate time and energy to the big idea instead of the individual development tasks is always the right move to make. So that's really where I would end.
I can't resist making you a final question. It's almost like a provocation, but I'm sorry, but I
Sure.
have to ask you this. Uh, I heard there are some changes in tariffs and stuff like that. How will that affect your activity?
So a couple of things. So luckily for now, I don't know, ask me in an hour, it will probably all be different, but for now, services are exempt from this. So we've been okay for now. It's just creating enormous levels of turbulence, and it creates sometimes even just a little bit of underlying resentment sometimes of just a market participant behaving so badly at the national level. It affects individuals who live in that country, and it's frustrating that it happens that way. But at least for now, like I said, for today, the services have been exempt, so there's no material impact.
Okay, I hope there won't be any impact in your activity in the future, and I hope you'll continue to develop these great projects. So thank you very much for being with us today for this interview. And anyone who wants to get in touch, please reach for the podcast notes, and you'll find Christopher there. Thank you very much, and
Excellent.
see you
Thank you so
soon.
much. Bye.
Bye bye.
Hey, welcome back to InnovEU, the EU Project Chronicles. In this section, we dive into a major funding opportunity for vocational education and training in Europe, the Erasmus EDU 2025 CoVE call. If you're a vet provider, regional authority, or innovation agency looking to lead transformation in skills ecosystems, this one's for you. This call is part of the Centers of Vocational Excellence CoVE initiative under Erasmus+. The EU is no longer just funding traditional education. It's building cross-border skills ecosystems that tackle industrial transitions, regional innovation, and workforce resilience. This means strong links with regional economic development, work-based learning at its core, and deep collaboration between education, research, and business. The idea is simple. Education can't be an island. CoVEs are designed to anchor VET into local innovation ecosystems. Projects must deliver on 3 clusters of activities. Cluster 1, teaching and learning, minimum 4 activities. Cluster 2, cooperation and partnership, minimum 3 activities. Cluster 3, governance and funding, minimum 2 activities. Expected outcomes include aligned regional skills strategies, joint curriculum development, better quality assurance, stronger employer engagement, and systemic policy-level change. It's not just about training people, it's about transforming regions. Your consortium must include at least 8 applicants from 4 different countries, EU or associated. And each country must contribute 1 vet provider, secondary, post-secondary, or tertiary, and 1 enterprise or employer organization. This ensures that education and industry are both at the table. Affiliated entities or associated partners can join but don't count toward the minimum. And heads up, your coordinator must be from an EU member state or an associated country. Here are examples of eligible participants: vet providers, innovation agencies, companies or sectoral bodies, qualification authorities, research institutes, and regional development authorities. Also, activities must cover EQF levels 3 to 8. If you target higher education only, your project won't be eligible unless it includes lower levels and strong work-based learning elements. Deadline: 11 June 2025, 17 Brussels time. Where to apply: EU Funding and Tenders Portal. Call ID: Erasmus EDU 2025 CoVE. Duration: normally 48 months. Budget: while the guide doesn't set a strict cap, past CoVE projects typically receive between $4 million and $6 million. So aim for high impact, high value. So, is this the right call for your organization? Ask yourself, are you embedded in a regional vet and innovation ecosystem? Can you commit for 4 years? Do you have at least 3 strong international partners ready to co-lead? If yes, go for it. The European Commission is betting on CoVEs to build the next generation of skills ecosystems, and this might be your moment. For more details, visit the EU Funding and Tenders portal and search for Erasmus EDU 2025 PEX CoVE.
InnovEU, the EU Project Chronicles, is a weekly video podcast. Please subscribe to the Polyglot's newsletter to receive every podcast episode. And if you like receiving it, please press like in whatever platform you are watching or listening. Also, please share InnovEU and Polyglot's with anyone you feel will enjoy it. Credits: author and host Fernando C. Gaspar, music Hugo Gaspar, Lisbon, Portugal, 2024. Reach us by email or DM.